rules. Oh, just about, mate, just about. We're getting there. I'm changing the rules on barbecue cooking.
Oh yeah, in which way?
The best way.
Can I ask you all to come around in front, please, if that's okay? And welcome to the Change the Rules rally. My name's Joel Bowden. I'm the General Secretary at Unions NT, the Trades Labour Council, and have recently taken over. But what we're here more importantly today about, and I think you'll all agree, is about equality and fairness. Because for too long now, wages haven't been keeping up. Things are getting more expensive, rent gets more expensive, everything's getting more expensive, but workers are working their butts off, productivity's going up, but we're not seeing the pay in your pay package so you can afford to do those special things with your family, so you can enjoy a day out, you can enjoy to not worry about that next bill that comes in, that big electricity bill, or that unexpected dishwasher or fridge that breaks down, or the air conditioner that breaks down up here. So today, comrades, we're here about equality, we're here about fairness, and this government, this current federal government, just haven't heard it. In fact, today, Kelly O'Dwyer said, oh, these people are striking, it's not right, they're not allowed to strike. Well, it's not a strike, it's a political protest, it's a political action. And what did we say when they couldn't figure out who their leader was? Oh, that's okay, have the day off Parliament? Like, they are such a rabble, these mob, that they can have a day off Parliament and they have a go at us for asking for a fair day's pay. Shame. So thank you for your support. Across the country today, we have seen huge crowds in Melbourne. They're reporting over 150,000 people march down the streets. Sydney, all across the country, the people are speaking because this government's not listening. We have to tell the next government, which is going to be, if we all get out there and work hard, a Labor government, a shortened government, that they need to change the rules. So we need to work hard together. We need to work up till May, or whenever this next election is, to kick this mob out. The mob that don't turn up to work and don't expect to be fined. The mob that can't figure out who their leader is. They have to say it on the news. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, because you forgot. Prime Minister of the day, Scott Morrison. It's an absolute joke. Let's join together, let's make a change and get rid of this mob. I want to welcome Thomas Mayer from the MUA, he's former president at Unions NT, to say a few words.
Thanks, Joel. Comrades, I just want to begin by acknowledging country. We're here on the lands of the Larrakia people, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. And it's pretty fitting that we're gathering here near Nigel Scullion's office, the Minister for Indigenous Oppression from the Coalition of Destruction. Nigel Scullion is an absolute bastard. His government has not only attacked penalty rates, has not only tried to destroy our conditions, limit our ability to strike, spent $88 million of taxpayers' money trying to destroy our organisations that are the only thing that stand between slavery and a decent living. Nigel Scullion, who is the architect of the Community Development Program, CDP, a program that disproportionately punishes Aboriginal people, that punishes them and cuts them off from any income if they don't meet stringent conditions. CDP is sending Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in a further downward spiral, and all he is doing is oppressing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And that bastard, when we called for a First Nations voice to be enshrined in the Constitution, he said the Australian people wouldn't support it. And is he wrong? Yes. Absolutely he's wrong. He is wrong to attack workers' conditions. He is wrong to attack Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we are going to kick that bastard out. And you know what? Mark my words, his time is limited. That bastard will be gone soon. We are here to make sure of that. We will change the rules. But you know what? This movement does not end with that. We learn our lessons. The first time I was politically motivated to get on the polls and hand out polling cards and all that sort of stuff was in 2007. I got a call from a comrade in the middle of the night. He was so afraid of AWAs and work choices that he couldn't even tell anybody what his wages and conditions were. And that motivated me. I couldn't cop it. Some of you here might be at your first rally today. I'll tell you what we learned back then is that when we change the government, that doesn't mean that the rules are changed there and then. It means that we have to keep growing, and we need to keep Labor accountable if they get in and make sure that they do change the rules.
Yeah.
Now, I'll give another example. We may not be many here. In Darwin, I think we're close to 170,000, but not quite. But we've got a problem that we understand about governments not delivering what is promised to our people. And I'm not going to tiptoe around it. The MUA is very disaffected with the Labor government here. And we need to step up. We need to step up here to make sure they deliver what they've promised us. And so that is a very early and important lesson as well, that we must continue to grow the union movement. We must continue to get more and more politically activated, and we must continue to fight and never take a backward step, and we're going to change the rules, comrades.
Thanks, Thomas. I'd also like to now welcome up the ETU Queensland NT Secretary Peter Ong to say a few words.
Thank you, comrade, and thank you all, comrades, for showing out today. We may not be 170,000, but in spirit we're exactly the same, I can tell you. First of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. Comrades, I think I'm speaking to the converted here, right? We all know what's fucking wrong in this country at the moment. We all know that the rules are broken. We all know that big business is making massive profits. Their CEOs are making massive wages, and none of that, if you use their bullshit term, is trickling down to the workers in this country. Trickle-down economics is a myth. The only thing that trickles down is the shit and the sweat that our Labor provides profits for big business in this country. And the reason that is happening today is quite simple. Big business knows what has to happen. They have to divide workers from the only people or the only movement that can deliver them decent wages and decent conditions, and that's the trade union movement. The rules are broken, but they didn't just happen overnight. This has been a strategic and long 20-year campaign from the LNP government, because they are the people that deliver big business what they need. And I mean, we have an ALP government which should be delivering what workers need in this country. That's why we set it up. The ALP was formed from the shearers' strike way back at Barcaldine all those years ago because workers had nowhere else to go. They knew that they needed a political voice in government. And so the ALP was formed to deliver that political voice. And over the years, the ALP has lost their way. They need to be kicked in the arse every now and again to make sure that they're doing what they were formed to do. And we will do that. But right now we have an LNP government that's been in power for some time, and I have done meetings and meetings and meetings on massive projects, on small jobs all around the country when we're leading up to every election, going, if we get this LNP government back in, this is what they're going to do. If you think it's tough now, wait and see what's going to happen if they do this. And the last one was the catalyst. with some of the legislation that was introduced that stripped away, made illegal content in our agreements which protected workers' wages and conditions, labour hire clauses, casual clauses, all of these things which are fundamental to protecting workers' wages and conditions were just made illegal overnight. And that's what happened if you take your eye off the ball and allow governments of the day to get back in that are only out there to do one thing, and that's look after big business. 20 years I've been a union official. When I started as a union official, I used to walk onto a job and I could spend all day on that job. I didn't need a right of entry. I didn't have to put in a 24-hour right of entry notice. I'd walk through the front gate, go, how you going, guys? And I'd spend all day walking the job, talking to workers and educating them about unionism. And that was something that big business couldn't cop, and so they needed their lapdogs, or their pit bulls, if you want to call them that, the LNP government, to get into power and change rules and put legislation in that stopped unions having that ability. And if you look back to 2000, when I started as a union official, straight away 2001, John Howard introduced a Royal Commission into corruption in the building and construction industry. It was found after about $68 million of workers' tax money. So workers, the tax that they pay being used against them, right, in the Royal Commission into corruption in the building and construction industry. 12 months of that, $68 million of our money, they found absolutely no corruption in the building and construction industry. But lo and behold, they had to introduce the ABCC. That what was introduced out of the 2001 Royal Commission was the Australian Building Construction Commission. The ABCC, which is a police force, introduced only for that industry and introduced only to keep unions, delegates and union members in tow. An absolute disgrace. What else came out of John Howard's term in government was work choices that we all know. And the biggest thing that came out of his term in government was AWAs, which Thomas talked about before. Again, separating workers from other workers and their union movement. It was a whole strategy to start implementing legislation that separated workers. If you don't want to talk to your neighbour about something or your co-worker about what you're on, who introduces a legislation or an agreement that says you don't talk to your fellow workmate about what wages and conditions you're on? That was the start of this, comrades, right? So then we got a government, well, we all knew it was wrong. This is not Nazi Germany. What he was doing was wrong. And so we built a worker-led wave of conviction that turfed not only that legislation out, but John Howard out of his own seat and that government out of power. Yeah. But as Thomas said, where we went wrong back there, comrades, is we were all pretty tired. It had been a pretty fair campaign. And we thought we had the great white hope. There we go, I've just ripped it out. I think that's it. The great white hope, Kevin Rudd into power, everything was going to be great now. And so we stopped campaigning. And he was one of the most narcissistic, horrible human beings I've ever met in my life. And so what we asked, or what we expected out of a Labor government, we saw absolute turmoil. We saw 6 years of debacle. Nothing happened that we thought was going to happen. And the reason for that is because the trade union movement and workers in this country stopped campaigning when we got Kevin Rudd into power. And that is a mistake we learnt, and that is a mistake that we will not make again with Bill Shorten and this next government. I'll give you the drum, comrades. So if you have a look at that Howard era, we had that turmoil with Rudd and Gillard. And Gillard, believe me, Julia tried to do some good shit, but when you got a narcissist like Kevin Rudd just knifing you every chance he gets, she had no hope. And then we ended up with Abbott. How the hell does a right-thinking democratic country vote in Tony fucking Abbott, for Christ's sake? But we did, and that just shows you the disillusioned voters in this country, and it got worse. Disillusioned, and when we get disillusioned voters in that, it becomes very hard to bring along the young people in this country into politics and into actually what's going on, because they go, ah, fuck that. I'm not interested in that. Look at it, it's an embarrassment. But unfortunately, when we start losing those people, we end up with the situation we're in right now. We had Tony Abbott got in. What's the first thing he did? I'm pretty sure it was a Royal Commission into the trade union movement, wasn't it? Yep, that's right. Tony Abbott gets in, he introduces a Royal Commission into the trade union movement. Another $80-odd million of workers' tax money spent on a Royal Commission to fuck over workers. So what ends up happening out of that? Not one trade union official was found guilty of any corruption. Not one. But they didn't stop them from dragging them out of their houses in front of their wives and children. Mind you, the news was already called, and every paper of the day had it spread all over it. People like Mark Lomax, John Lomax, who was the ex-Canberra player? John Lomax. A nicer bloke you've never met, but a bloke who's out for the workers and his family, a nicer bloke you have never met, was dragged out of his home in handcuffs, thrown in a paddy wagon in front of his family, strewn all over every Fairfax newspaper. He was let go in front of the whole media about 8 hours later. He was dragged out of his home on the evidence of a builder who was doing the wrong thing, unsafe job. He'd been kicked the day before by the CFMEU, so he rings up the task force and says, John Lomax is corrupt, he's been doing this. They don't look into any of that evidence. They drag him out of his house in handcuffs and lock him up, and it's over every news bulletin and every newspaper in Australia. And that is the mud that is stuck on the trade union movement and pushed workers away from the trade union movement over the last 5 years. And now we see a Royal Commission that this government opposed for so long into the banking industry that has shown laundering of terrorist money, charging dead people fees for services that aren't produced, charging super members for insurances that they're not even giving to them. And have we seen one banker dragged out of his home in handcuffs and thrown into jail? Not one. No one's been arrested, no one's been charged. You know what they did? They said, oh, we're going to charge them, we're going to have this, I can't even know what they called it, but they charged them $800 million, and they came out with all this advertising saying, this is the biggest fine ever been placed on any corporation. $800 million fine on the banks. And the next week, they wanted to give them, what, a $40 billion tax cut? And $17 billion of that $40 billion tax cut was going to the 4 big banks. So they paid $800 million in fines and got $17 billion in tax cuts. What a disgrace. What an absolute disgrace. And everybody sits here and goes, well, that's all right, I guess. That's all right. We have to wake up, comrades. We have to wake up in this country. And we have to bring along the younger generation, because we've got 2 generations in my industry, 2 generations of apprentices who don't give a shit about anything. Admittedly, a lot of them have ended up in a lot of debt because of that strategy that Howard did. Right, we'll have cheap interest rates. We'll give you a $20,000 first home buyer's grant, and all of a sudden they're in an enormous amount of debt and they can't afford to walk out the door. I'll tell you, they can't afford to not be involved in the trade union movement, and they cannot afford to not be involved in this campaign, because if we have this Liberal government back in power for another term, God help us all. And I mean that 100%. I am just managing to stay out of jail as the secretary of a trade union in this country now, and I guarantee you, if this bloody political party gets back in again, we will not be able to stay out of jail. They will come for us lock, stock and barrel, comrades. There is only one thing that we can do, and it's a good thing. We've just got to stand up. We've got to fight back. We've got to organise, speak to people, barbecues. And I know I'm preaching to the converted, because I look around here and there's comrades that I've seen for 20 years, right, who do exactly that. But where is everyone else? They're the ones we got to get along. Because we get rid of this shitbag government, right, who looks after no one but big business. Have a look at all the resources that have been ripped out of our country and sent offshore for no benefit to this country. They look after themselves, they look 4 years ahead, and that's it. We've got to get rid of this government, we've got to change the rules, we've got to get the ALP back in and campaign against them until they do change the rules. That's the right to strike, no unallowable matters in EBAs, the right to patent bargaining, and the right to right of entry at any time for trade union organisers, all union organisers in this country. So, comrades, it's simple. How do we fix it? Change the rules? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Oh, let's do it, comrades!
Thanks, Peter. And comrades, what we're going to do, grab a placard, grab a flag. We're going to march down to Nigel Scullion's, because what do we do when workers' rights are attacked? What do we do? Let's go!
We've got a week of action coming up for the reinstatement. Go larger. One photo with everybody holding exactly that. It takes a little bit from everyone to make change. If you do nothing, nothing changes. So let's start speaking to people. We've got a big 4 or 5 months ahead of us in relation to the next federal election. The NT has got a lot of issues itself, which are going to play out in that. There's a lot of different groups that need our support that share the same views as we do about the Northern Territory. So it takes more than a couple of us, it takes a whole lot of us to get involved to make that change. So let's start speaking. Let's get every one of us walk away from here today and get one person to join a union. Get one person to come to the next rally. That's how it starts. It doesn't start with people like us that have already done it. It starts with us speaking to those people and getting them involved. It doesn't take much of your time to make a difference. So let's do it. Thomas is going to grab the photo.
Let's all stand here in front of the Minister for Indigenous Oppressions thing here.
Nigel scumbags!
Nigel Scullion!
Nigel scumbags!
Nigel's a wanker!
Nigel's a wanker! Nigel's a scumbag! Nigel's a scumbag!
Thanks, comrade.
Thanks, comrades. Great turnout. Look, we'll head down the road, gather our stuff, and then anyone who's keen, I think we'll just wander in next door there.
Leave it that way. That way.
Then have a couple of quieties, and we'll see if this pub play fluctuates or not. We'll see how we roll from there. Thanks, everyone, and get out there and sign someone up and get someone else involved.
That's a wrap.
I've been coming over here.
Together